This afternoon I am talking to Darryl Grimason, broadcaster, producer and keen naturalist, who's been involved in filming some really interesting documentaries, including Waterworld, that was aired on BBC back in 2006. Darryl, thank you so much for talking to me and taking part in this. So my first question really is in regards to Waterworld, and I really want to hear what you've got to say about that and your experiences from filming the series.
How you doing, Sally? It's lovely to chat to you, but I've had to think long and hard about this because it's like 16 years or so since we actually made it. Originally, I had the idea for it because I'd made a series called Off the Beaten Track, where we went and explored the high mountains around Northern Ireland, and I was always motivated by adventure and by nature and by experiencing it. So we ended up then, I thought to myself, well, I've been to the top of Northern Ireland, what's at the bottom of it? So I knew that we had incredible biodiversity around our shores, and I thought, well, I wonder if I could learn to dive and sell it to the BBC, that we could give you the experience of meeting creatures that you would never normally see. And so I pitched it with a fellow producer, Carol O'Kane, and they bought it. And so then it was a case of, right, okay, now I've actually got to learn to dive. And the way it shook down with my normal job, I ended up having to learn to dive in Strangford Lough in January of the year that we were going to film in the summer. And I went down to the wreck of the Alistair in Strangford Lough with DV diving, and they taught me over a period how to do it. And I have to say, I really didn't enjoy it at the beginning. It was horrible. I couldn't fly the stab jacket and the suit properly, so I'd end up letting too much air out of the suit. The sea would grip me and freeze me because I was diving in about 4 or 5 degrees. And I remember coming out of the water, and they gave me a cup of tea to kind of to heat me up, and my hands were like this, and I was spilling hot tea all over my hands, and I couldn't feel it, and I couldn't get it into my mouth either. But little by little, I kind of got there. But by the time we started to film, I'd only done about 20 dives maybe, and I was seriously inexperienced. And obviously, you learn to dive with the normal regulator. But the day before we started to film, the dive master who was responsible for us introduced me to a face mask where I didn't have access to my nose to equalize the pressure in my ears. It was really challenging. So you're swallowing like crazy to try and equalize the pressure. And within the first week, my inexperience led to we were ascending towards the rib, and I got confused as to how fast I was going and all the rest of it, and I couldn't clear my ears, and I actually thought I was going to burst my eardrums. And we took a break of a couple of days after that just to see if I was okay. It was excruciatingly painful, and so the pressure of doing it in presenting in 2 elements, if you like, was a big challenge, because I had no notes, so I had to crash learn loads of stuff about cup corals and jewel anemones, and be able to recognize stuff, to be able to talk about them, to be able to share with people at home, rather than saying, oh, look at that lovely thing there, and then have to write a script later which breaks you away from the actual experience. So I loved that. I absolutely loved that. But physically extremely demanding as well. I was about 11.5 stone whenever I started the project, and by the time we ended, I was 10.25. It was like it's the best diet. That kind of diving is the best diet you'll ever go on. That plus the pressure of doing it for telly.
Excellent. I know a lot of divers who will appreciate what you had to go through to train up to that level, especially in such a short period of time. And you were wearing a full face mask, and I imagine that was quite difficult to adjust to. Were your buddies who were also underwater, were they wearing full face masks? Were you able to talk to them as well?
Yes and no. I had the Dave Bull, who was our dive master. He was obviously listening in to what was being said below, so I could hear him and he could talk to me. And Doug Anderson, who was our underwater cameraman, Doug was also able to communicate with me. Like he's an amazing guy. I could not believe that Carol had managed to secure his services for us. This is a guy who has filmed in every environment underwater in the world, a blue chip cameraman for Blue Planet. And he happened to be free that summer. And his photography, both with me and with the stuff that was under there, and how he tweaked the colours in the camera so that you could take that, that really strong green look that you get off our underwater landscape. They tweaked the camera a little bit and suddenly it was blue and crystal and extraordinary, and it looked $1 million. So my dive buddy, with whom I would not go down without, Jim Delaney, he trained with me and alongside me. He had spent a long time working in the Red Sea and as a dive master and taking tourists down. And he said, before I'd begun dive, he said, Darryl, there is nothing in the Red Sea that will compare to what you're going to see in underwater in Northern Ireland. He said, the biodiversity, and I find this to be the truth, the range of life that is teeming down there is incredible. And Strangford Lough itself is astonishingly beautiful. 2,000 marine species in that one location. It's right next to Belfast, and yet it is this extraordinary underwater landscape where you have, like 2,000 species. You've got the wildness that comes in terms of the birds to that place from all over the Northern Hemisphere. But you can, on occasion, you'll see killer whales, you'll see basking sharks. It is just the most incredible place, and I suppose really the jewel in the crown of the Northern Irish underwater landscape. Yeah, it was a massive logistical challenge, this, and it was also so weather dependent, so element dependent, so dependent on whether creatures would show up for you or not. So we planned out, where would we go? Where are the places that you would absolutely want to show an audience that will knock their eyes out, make them go, oh my word, did you see that last night? Had you any idea the colours that were under there? So we planned for places like Rathlin and the North Coast. We did, Strangford in particular was a no-brainer, because it's so rich. And the fact that the Irish Sea races in and out of that, the largest sea inlet in Britain and Ireland, it comes in at such pace, it poses major problems for you for when you can dive. And then whenever you are down there, because of the tidal rush, how long you have in terms of, for me as a novice diver, I was sucking air like a car that was had an 8-litre engine in it. I couldn't get more than 15 or 20 minutes out of a tank of air because I was chatting, and I wasn't really very, very good at flying the suit anyway. So everything gets telescoped into the wrong way, But as I say, we chose particular places because, like for Strangford, we wanted to see the horse mussel beds, which we had real difficulty in finding, and those are internationally important, protected under European law, and we're being wrecked by trawling and those other practices which are now banned in the area, and they have come back again. But whenever we went down there, I ended up over a galaxy of starfish. I mean, it was like biblical proportions, these little wriggling things. And you go, oh my Lord, I had no idea that existed. And for an audience as well, they would have no idea. But also, we timed it obviously during the summer where we had more daylight to be able to film. But one of the big things I most wanted to do was to be able to snorkel with basking sharks. and I had spotters. I made contact with loads and loads of people, and as soon as they arrived just round the corner from Portrush, people started to text and to phone, and we actually left. We left, I think, Strangford to go up to the north coast, just so that we could bring the entire production to that place. And we were in the midst of a really big number of basking sharks. I got into the water, I was trembling with excitement and also a bit of trepidation, fear, if you like, anxiety, because when you get into the water with them, they have a mouth that's kind of like the aperture of a jet engine, a brain the size of a golf ball, and we all know people like that too. But whether they chose to hit you with a tail, or the fact that they would swim directly at you and you could disappear into their mouth. Now, they're gentle giants, I understand that, but the scale of them is incredible. And Doug Anderson was free diving with them, suspending himself below them, filming me above, and I spent an entire day in the water with them, and it's one of the highlights of my entire life, never mind the series, to be in touch with these mysterious beasts that are so unknowable. And yet, when one in particular, there's a memory that stands out. The eye is about that size. Honestly, it's tiny. And as it came past me, and I could have reached out and touched it, literally touched it, but I was scared to touch it. The eye actually flicked at me in recognition. It knew I was there, clearly. It was recognizing me. And for that millisecond, I was inhabiting the same space as this thing. It must have been 25 feet long. It weighs probably the same as 2 African elephants, you know, and yet it's living on these microscopic little plankton. And on that day, it was little pink shrimp. I could actually feel them brushing against my lips. And it was like, it's going to make you sound a bit hippie or something, but it was a spiritual thing. It was deeply, deeply moving at the most instinctive level. And I'll forever feel privileged that I was allowed to share that space.
Unbelievable. Very envious. What an experience. So it sounds like, you know, you had things that you planned to see, and it sounds like you were very fortunate. You were able to go and see the basking shark and audio this, but you also then had all these extra things that you weren't even expecting that just blew your mind beyond what you'd planned. And that's what's just so amazing about the seas around us here. You know, it is full of surprises.
It is, absolutely. And you know, one of the highlights which is available to probably everybody was in Strangford Lough. Now I learned to dive on the Alistair, as I said. Now it's a dark and dingy dive, and I as I said, didn't enjoy it that much because of the discomfort of learning in cold conditions. But by the time I went back to Strangford in the summer, oh my Lord, there's a place, there's a wreck, the SS Empire Tana, and it's in Ballyhenry Bay. It's so shallow you can see it from the road. You do a shore dive on it, and at slack tide, you can even snorkel out to it. But inside is this underwater garden of beautiful floating kelp and other seaweeds. And the day that we had, the sun was out, and it was the shards of light were coming through the old joists that were rusting away. But internally and at the back of the ship, there are sponges and dead men's fingers. And on the deep side of the dive, we looked out and there were big shoals of pollock just hanging in the tide. And you're thinking, like, wow, this is a ship that sunk in about 1946, 47, 48, something like that. Italian built in the first place, but it ran aground there and it has broken up, and now it is a living reef. You know, it's the sort of thing that we watch in Blue Planet and we go, oh my, isn't that gorgeous? It's literally off the roadside. in Ballyhenry Bay, and that blew me away. And it was one of those ones I really loved to dive because it was so easy to do. There was no jeopardy in it for me. It wasn't too deep. It required little more than a gentle sort of flying of your suit through.
From the series, there's some lovely clips of interactions with some of these creatures, and you mentioned the cookie wrasse, and I was watching one this morning of the Dublin blade prawn, or nephrops, whatever you want to call it.
Oh, they were
sort of
amazing.
chasing you. Yeah.
Yeah. And do you know what? I cannot see them now without knowing how they live in little burrows, you know,
Yeah.
and how they have a personality, if you like, as a little thing that lives down there. I've eaten many times since, but the fact now that people are dropping pots for them rather than dredging the seabed and destroying the kind of all of the other life that's down there. I mean, thankfully, there is an enlightenment around Strangford Lough and the unique nature of the place that is driving a more sustainable way of fishing and, you know, farming that environment, you know.
You did a lot of research about these species before the dives?
Yes, absolutely. And also I talked to a load of experts. Unfortunately, that's one of the fabulous things about being on a BBC project, because it opens doors to people like, you know, in the Ulster Museum and various other places where you could actually phone an expert and say, okay, what am I likely to see at X given point? And then they will open their minds to you and allow you to say stuff about, you know, pipefish or whatever, or even to recognize a pipefish. So that was invaluable, and lots of the research was done in books as well, because in actual fact we had hardly anything. In actual fact, there was one sort of old film, I think, for the BBC about underwater here, but what we did was basically break this open for the first time, if you like, because people genuinely did not know, unless you're a diver, unless you had your own kind of video, people didn't know what was down there, and so it was quite something. You had to have made a real mess of it, a really bad mess, for it not to look and be entertaining, because the environment is just so darn good, you know. And even the above water kind of shoreline, you know, down at the Dorn in Strangford, where you have this marine waterfall, one of very, very few anywhere in Britain and Ireland, where the tide goes out and goes over a lip, and you're able to go in there and you're able to see light bulb sea squirts and brick sponges and nudibranchs and all sorts of things that you really would only normally be able to see if you're wearing a full diving suit and an aqualung, and it's on the shore, you know. That's a remarkable place as well. But I think, you know, all in all, that sense of wonder that you get from being in a place that you know very, very little about was what was always driving me as a producer and a presenter, not just in that, but in you know, whether it was Big Six, the fishing series, or Coast to Coast, or Off the Beaten Track, or Return of the Raptors, and the other sort of natural world things that I've done. It's always been about trying to let people see that what we have here is extraordinary. It is world class. There is, you know, I am unashamed about it. Too many times in this particular corner of the world, we would beat ourselves up a bit about, you know, the bigger picture stuff. But our landscape is well, in my view, and I'm biased, but our landscape and our seascape are unparalleled. They are just extraordinary. And I think that, you know, celebrating that letting people know and see what we have, they will therefore hopefully care whether trawlers go down there and wreck the bottom or whether we should be preserving and conserving. I think that's an important piece of work too.
We all are very aware of the massive impacts that Blue Planet 2 had on the wider public consciousness, and what we really need is something done at a local scale that gets that across. And obviously Waterworld has set an excellent basis for doing that, and making people more aware of what we have locally, and to understand that if we start changing our behaviours locally and at home outside our front door, we can start making a real contribution to protecting the marine environment.
One of the things that brings that home to me is that, you know, clearly we weren't going to show the bad side of things underwater, because that wasn't what this series was about. But I remember particularly diving off the shore, you know, where the coastal zone is in Port Rush. Yep. You know, is it Lansdowne? That area, right? Well, I was down there, and we were just swimming around looking for stuff, and we filmed with a massive lobster. But next to that lobster, at the face of that drop off on the sand, were beer cans and plastic bags and all the detritus that the unthinking throw in. So what you have is, you know, this ancient creature that's very, very old in itself, in that beautiful environment, you know, next to the mess that we make, you know.
It's just education, isn't it? And we are getting there. Slowly but surely.
I think we are, but I think that, you know, one of the things that Blue Planet makes very clear to us is that underwater landscape of Northern Ireland, like at Rathlin and, you know, around the Giant's Causeway, etc., it is all part of the same thing. So that Atlantic Ocean, which butts up against America and Greenland and all of the other places where it is, you're actually you're interconnected. And I know, because I've picked up a plastic that was from crab cages in Canada on the beach at Runcarry. So it's the actions of people on all over the world are reflected in communities across the world. Scuba diving is quite a specific thing, isn't it? You know, you need all the gear. It's expensive to get set up on and all the rest. But it is its own reward once you do that. Absolutely. But there are other ways of experiencing that marine environment. I'm a very keen bodyboarder. I'm not great at it. I love bodyboarding, and I love feeling that connection of speed that's given to me by waves that started off, you know, maybe in a hurricane on the other side of the world. But additionally, I've done a lot of snorkeling, and that can be its own reward as well. That is cheap as chips to do. But my goodness, the things that you can see, it's remarkable. But I know of other people, like, for example, Hannah Stacey, for that series, we brought her across from England. She was competition free diver. We took her off Rathlin, and we talked to her about the passion that drives her to want to go back to, I suppose, really, it's like an evolutionary state of regression, where you can suspend your requirement to breathe air, go into the marine environment like a seal, preserve the oxygen in your blood, and be able to swim around there in a metallic suit and a big monofin and get very, very deep. That was extraordinary to see. So there are levels of commitment that you need to experience it or not. And I would also say that one of my biggest joys to this day is a thing which I started with my father as a really wee boy, and that's rock pooling. Rock pooling is one of the nicest ways to spend an afternoon with your children, and Bloody Bridge is amazing, just outside Newcastle. Go down there, you know, you can see the little anemones, you can see the blennies, you can see the coralline seaweeds, and you never know what you're going to meet, because sometimes you get a really big crab that's trapped in there. Sometimes it's just tiny wee things like spiders. children love that. There's a sense of wonder. It's like a large rock pool could be like an ocean to a child, and it's a great way to get them introduced to the natural world.